and welcome. So excited that you have taken the time to join us. We don't take that for granted at all. Your time is so valuable, and so I'm so happy to see you all. As you can see each other, you can see me, and so if you're able to have your camera on, especially later on in our chat as we head into Q&A time. We love to hear your voice. We like to see your face. We want to feel like we're in the same space. So if you're able to have your camera, always love to see your faces. Um, and just a quick note that this session is being recorded and it will be sent to you sometime tomorrow for you to review and to have. My name is Lori. I work for ATMA CENA and I am currently in Calgary. And I'm joined by Sergio, who is someone that we sort of met by chance, and I'm so honored to know that we're now connected. He has over 20 years of experience in sacred medicine and a background spanning law, psychotherapy, and psychedelic-assisted therapy. He has practiced law for 12 years, both in Mexico and the UK, before shifting to psycho studies in India in various ashrams, curandera, and leads groups to explore Mexico's sacred mushroom tradition. He holds a master's degree in integral counseling and East-West psychology and a PhD focused on the training of psychedelic-assisted therapy. He is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he has served as a core faculty at CIIS, AMPIDET in Mexico, Protocol Q, and mentored CIIS PAP program. CIS is in California, if you wanted to know. He is a MAPS MDMA assisted therapy practitioner and is a lead facilitator at Beckley Retreats. He teaches, mentors, and develops psychedelic therapy curricula. Specializing in inter-transpersonal growth, his work centers on existential growth, consciousness, expansion, and simply put, helping people rediscover who they really are. How beautiful. Tonight, we're here to explore where psychology and spirituality meet in psychedelic therapy and how traditional and modern approaches can learn from one another. Sergio, welcome. So happy to have you here.
Sorry.
As we dive into this next hour, I wonder, how are you arriving into this conversation today? What is top of mind for you? What's in your heart? What would you like to share with us as we dive in?
Thank you. And thank you everyone for being here. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, depending on where you are. Grateful that you are here today. I hope we make it worth it for you. And again, thank you, Lori. Muchas gracias to be here with us. Top of mind. Well, first, excited really to see all these faces and know that all of you are people that are doing the work, that are people that are being trained to do the work. In other words, that you take this seriously. Something that I tell students, especially when we talk about the spiritual aspects, you need to take spirit seriously. Right? We talk the talk, but we need to walk the talk when it comes to spirit. We need to believe. As Jung used to say, something that I love to quote, invited or uninvited, spirit is always present. So since it is here already, being aware of it and invited it and accepting it is important. And again, knowing that all of you are taking this work that for me is very sacred. Hopefully we'll talk a little bit about it. I won't bore you with my background anymore, but it's something that is really important to me. We see there's so much bad stuff going on in the world in general, but in the psychedelic world as well. And that's why I believe that it's important that people take it seriously and take the time to train and stop believing in psychedelic exceptionalism, that no, nothing will happen because the medicine will take care. No, this is serious work. This is important work, and you need to engage accordingly. That's top of mind.
Beautiful share. That's beautiful. Thanks. And a beautiful segue into my next question to you. You've worn so many hats and have done very many things. It feels like you've lived a few different lives. What called you into the psychedelic space? What was the catalyst for you to enter into this work?
Well, two things. I enter in the psychedelics. By the way, let me know if my connection is choppy. Sometimes it happens over here. So let me know if you cannot hear me. So first, my Mexican heritage. Even though I'm in Mexico, I entered the world of psychedelics late in life. I was already probably in my late 30s or mid 30s when I first entered psychedelics. I was aware of it, but I either had the right friends or the wrong friends, because psychedelic never crossed my path in college or later in my life. It was just, I guess I was not ready. You know how they say that the teacher appears when the student is ready? I definitely was not ready early in my life. So after I went to a personal crisis. And after being a lawyer for many years, going to a personal crisis, going to India, returning to the US, I said, I need to start healing myself. There was a lot of wounds in my life. So in some ways, as many are wounded healers. Like, so I am a wounded healer, and what brought me to call me to psychedelics was my own wounds. So that's the historical answer, but let me switch the script a little bit. And as I switch the script, I want you to think about your answer to this question. I was once at CIIS doing some research, and of course my research project was on psychedelics, and I was talking with one of my, not CIIS teachers, one of my shamanic teachers, I guess. And I was telling her, well, we were talking about my research project, and say, well, I chose to talk about psychedelics for this and this and that. And she looks at me with a twinkle in her eyes, and she says, what makes you think that you chose the mushrooms? And it just blew my mind. Blew my mind that maybe that was right. Maybe I was not choosing the mushrooms. Maybe the medicine was choosing me, not in a messianic way, or you're the chosen one. You are all have been chosen, right? But I love the idea of, again, taking it seriously and switching the script and thinking, no, it's not ego. It's not, I am not the one choosing. I am being chosen. I'm following a path. And in that way, I didn't choose this path. The path chose me. And I cannot think at this point of any other path that would fit me better.
I love that. And now we see those paths sort of all intersecting in one beautiful meeting space, which sounds that it's psychedelic therapy. And so you said that the psychedelic space and psychology is really the bridge between, no, sorry, psychology and spirituality are bridged by psychedelics. And so I wonder what that looks like in practice for you.
Sure. So first, we need to, something that we forget, well, maybe not you, but a lot of people forget, is that psychology, the word psyche means spirit or soul, right? So psychology means the study of the soul. Psychotherapy means the study, the treatment of the soul. Now, of course, things have changed in our society. And now when we think about psychology and psychology, we think about the mind, and sometimes not even the mind, the brain. So strictly speaking, psychotherapy ought to be involved with the soul. There is even the branch of transpersonal psychotherapy, interval psychotherapy, that is, it wants to embrace those aspects of it. But it has been difficult to bring the soul, to bring spirit, as I said, invited or uninvited, but a lot of therapists don't know how to invite it. I happen to believe that all psychological growth is a spiritual growth. It's actually like this one line. This is not my idea. This is actually from Ken Wilber, but it is one line of development from birth all the way to illumination, right? What happens is that psychotherapy stops short. As long as you say, okay, you're able to go back to work, we're done, we're good, go back. Spirituality keeps the process going. But anyway, that's not your question. Your question is where psychedelics play in a very secularized world where science, and I did give a presentation a year ago about this, where science somewhat in their process for separating from the Middle Ages said, you know, we are different. We have nothing to do with the superstition of religion. We have a method. We have the scientific method, and so on and so forth. They push away all of spirituality, and psychology even itself has struggled to jump in the wagon of science, right? So this goes from the Enlightenment onwards. I won't go into all the historical details, you know them, but when we get to psychedelics, what happens is that the researchers realize, you know, there are some things that happen here that we cannot understand with a materialistic framework. We need to expand it. So it is one of the first times, or perhaps the first time, that scientists had to really start, while studying psychedelics and studying the psychological application of psychedelics, they had to start talking about mystical experience. And they had to develop ways of measuring mystical experience. And they realized, to their surprise, they actually, I've talked with many of them, they didn't want to accept that. But they realized that this ego dissolution experience, that for the materialistic scientific method, it's what should we be talking about this? Those mystical experience, those spiritual experience had actually a correlation and impact in psychological health, and sometimes in physiological health, in physical health. So it was like they push away psychedelics through the door, spirituality through the door, science, just to jump back in through the window, to an open window that they were not expecting. And I think that's the beauty of psychedelic work, that it allows you to embrace all of who we are. And I think that as guides, practitioners, therapists, whatever word you want to use, and there's some discussion about what is the right word. We won't go into that unless you want me to. But as guides, we need to embrace this. Embrace is not the right word. We need to engage. If not with certainty, perhaps not even with certainty, but with curiosity and with respect, just as we would engage with any other phenomenon. So the scientific method requires that we acknowledge anything and everything we observe. And if these experiences consistently, not every single time, but consistently, psychedelics provide ego dissolution, mystical experiences, then science has to acknowledge it. And I find that beautiful, right? Well, some of the things that I like about psychedelics, I like to say that are like, you know, we think outside the box. Psychedelics break boxes. Whatever your box is, psychedelics come and say, no, think bigger than that. Okay, what about this? No, think bigger than that. So in the scientific model, psychedelics are forcing us to think bigger than that.
I like that. Just breaking the box right open.
Breaking the box. Yeah.
And you mentioned guides, and that's kind of where I want to go next. This holding both the science and the spiritual and the mystic, and guides, and how do we prepare guides to hold all of those things? Training is such a hot topic, I think, in the industry right now, and you put in a lot of work to think about and to analyze training. I think your PhD is in psychedelic therapy training.
Correct.
So you've talked about the risks of psychedelic training being a bit lopsided, either too clinical or too spiritual, or missing some really important elements. From your perspective, what's really at stake when guides aren't trained, and what are the most essential ingredients that every training program must include?
That's a big question. Let me give you a little bit of story. As you are right, after being involved in every aspect of the psychedelic equation, right? I've been a researcher, I've been a practitioner, I've been a mentor, I've done underground work. So in every potential area, I was part of an underground community here in the Bay Area, and for the X time there wasn't a scandal. We realized that the teachers were being abusive. They were violating boundaries, mostly sexual, but not only sexual boundaries, power boundaries, all sort of things, economical boundaries. So then I say, this is it. I sort of thought that I was in a safe community where those things didn't happen. When I realized that some of my teachers were also doing that, And then you look around and you say, oh, this is happening sadly everywhere. And we know that whatever we know is less than the tip of the iceberg, because a lot of those abuses, for many reasons, are not being expressed, are not being told. And when I start digging, I say, why does this thing happen? And then, of course, being a psychotherapy, well, they're following the transference. Is that they're not aware of the transference. They don't understand that what is happening is a regression to to give an example, right? It's a regression to childhood, and they're acting out as if they're dealing with an adult. This person is not an adult. This person is first in an expanded state of consciousness, and second, they may be regressed. So we need to understand those aspects, and many guides don't have that, or so-called guides, I should say. So I start saying, okay, how can we prevent this? And one of the answer that came to me, probably because of my years in academia, was we need better trainings. We need better trainings that work as you repeat. So they need to a good training. And I'm going around, but there's a method to my madness. I'm trying to answer the question. So I realized that most trainings, and just so you know, because you don't know about my dissertation. So that was my dissertation. My dissertation is, let's compare all the different trainings that I could find. After 3 years of research, I found 80 different trainings worldwide. From those 80 different trainings, I narrow it down to 16 that I thought were the top trainings in the world. So I compare all those trainings, I compare with the literature, I compare with a whole bunch of stuff, and then came up with what I call the integral blueprint, which is and the skeleton, a blueprint of what a psychedelic training program should include. And there are many ways of explaining this, and we can go into the details if you want to, or I can, through you, I can let everybody get a link to my dissertation. It's public. Intra, inter, and trans. Intrapersonal, interpersonal, and transpersonal. So most trainings are they're decent. Some are very good, some are more or less, but most trainings are decent when it comes from the technical aspect of it. Understanding what psychedelics are, understanding how to measure, how to give it, how dose, perhaps even thinking things connected. How do they work in the brain? Not all trainings. Some trainings say, well, you don't need to know how this is working in the brain. But anyway, most trainings are good in that aspect, in the technical aspect of a psychedelic session. Very few trainings are strong or even touch the intra-person. All the technical stuff is in the interpersonal. There are more to that. The interpersonal is not only that, it's also the relational aspect of it. It's also the trauma aspect of it, because trauma is relational. It's also the attachment part of it. It's also the psychodynamic. All of that is relational. So programs are okay, let's say, more or less, but they're okay on that. But when it comes with the intrapersonal, the personal work, most programs are rather weak on that. They go about many ways. A few programs do say, no, you need to do your inner work. You need to do your shadow work. You need to do your psychedelic work before sitting. But most programs say, okay, some programs try to get around that by saying, okay, if you're a psychotherapist, okay, you can get in. We don't need to get into the intrapersonal because you already did that. You already did that in your psychological program, psychology program, or whatever. That's not always the case, as we know. There are some psychology programs that don't even require that their students engage in psychotherapy. In the same way that now there's an ongoing discussion about whether psychedelic guides should have had experience with psychedelics, and that's another big discussion. So anyway, going back to your question, intrapersonal, rather weak. Some more than others, but rather weak. Because interpersonal work is difficult. You don't know what's going to happen. You're going to be surprised. So intrapersonal, so-and-so. Interpersonal, acceptable. Transpersonal, most programs don't even touch it. Most programs, they give it lip service. They say, yeah, there are mystical aspects of it. There are a transpersonal aspect to the work, but they don't really take it seriously. They don't really engage with it in a serious manner. Very few programs actually engage with the transpersonal. And even though that's somewhere in between, that doesn't cut in simply transfiction, inter, and trans. The indigenous aspect of the work, that every single program mentions, yeah, we have a debt of honor to our indigenous, with the indigenous people that have used this medicine, the native people, the original people, but very few really engage and respect them. They talk about as a historical, no, I don't want to say anomaly, but a historical fact. Oh yeah. The Mazatecs have been using mushroom for thousands of years. Oh yeah, the Chipivo Conibo I've been using ayahuasca. Oh, yeah. But they don't really take that seriously. And I think that if we're gonna train guides, it is important that those guides, we don't need to how do I say in English, reinvent the wheel. These traditions have been using psychedelics for thousands of years. Of course, it's a different cosmology. We are not going to become shamans. That would be totally wrong and probably impossible. But we can humbly learn from them. And most programs are not doing that. They're just giving them lip service to the existence of their traditions. It's difficult. Mm-hmm. It's complicated to do it. But a good program should include all these aspects. I don't know. I hope that sort of answer your question, Laurie.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll dig into that specific piece in a second. But what I want to know from you is, as you worked with a lot of students and people in the space, how have you seen this type of training transform a therapy practice?
Oh, deeply, significantly. I'm trying to say where the answer is hugely, but I'm trying to think where to start. Let's start for something that everybody here or many of you would understand. Psychotherapy changes you. When you're doing psychotherapy, doing your own work, if it's going well, and well doesn't mean happy. If you're going deep enough, it's going to change you. You're going to have more empathy. You're going to have more understanding. You're going to be more compassion. You're going to be able to go to places that you wouldn't go otherwise. So psychotherapy in itself changes you as a human being. That's why it's so important that psychotherapists go from Freud onwards. The idea that and the shamanic traditions thinks the same, by the way. Psychotherapy should be in therapy. Now, that gets you, if we can think about depth, psychotherapy gets you like, I don't know if you can see my hand, like this deep, right? Psychedelics get you really deeper. So you get to understand understand is a presumptuous word. You get to a sense of the nature of reality that otherwise it's impossible. Right? So when someone comes to you and presents you whatever problem it is, you know it in your bones, whether you have had the experience directly or no, because you have touched the face of God, if you may, or the depths of hell. Your heart is more open. Your presence is different. You almost can tell when someone has done this work. They're not easily scared because you've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Is kind of that thing. The psychedelic guy that has done their own work, they're gonna be able to go to different places, to deeper places with their participants, their clients, whatever you want to call them. Your heart breaks open. When your heart breaks open, the idea of how you see your clients is very different. So it changes you in every single way. It makes you, and of course I'm biased, but maybe all of you are as well, most likely. It makes you a better human being. And being a better human being is a prerequisite for being a good guide. We all have shadow. We all have our issues. No one is perfect. But this commitment to deep work and psychedelics, I mean, I don't know many people that do psychedelics want to say, well, okay, I got it, figure out, check. No, they say, oh, there's so much more to learn. there's so many aspects, right? I can go up, down, right, left, in any direction, and there's more to me. The old question, who am I? That's the only real question, is who am I? And psychedelics gives you glimpses to that. And then depending on where you land with that answer, you can be in a different place with your clients.
I think I'm going to listen to that a few more times. That really resonated. Thank you so much. So let's dive into Indigenous traditions. We already sort of started touching on it, but I want to go deeper there. And I know you have a relationship with Los Niños Sagrados, or mushrooms, and the Mazatec people in Mexico. There are differences, of course, with
I'm losing you, Lori. I cannot hear your question.
how psychedelics are approached.
I couldn't hear the question. Could you
Am I
repeat?
back? Yeah, of course. So what do you see as the most important differences between Indigenous communities and the Western clinical approach to psychedelics?
Good question. I love it. Let me tell you a story. I take groups again, for the same reason that I was here in the Bay Area, California, and I was meeting a lot of guides that were themselves presenting themselves as coming from the Mazatec tradition. And then when I say, oh, have you ever been in Huautla de Jimenez? I say, no, I haven't. But once a Mazateca healer came here and I did a ceremony with her, and therefore no. It doesn't work that way. So I decided start taking groups to Mexico to work and learn from indigenous healers quite a few years ago. And I remember in one of my first, I call them pilgrimage now, but back then I think I would call them trips. One of my first trips, we were sitting with a healer, and it was interesting because he spoke very choppy Spanish. So whatever people were asking me questions, and I would have to translate it to Spanish. And then there was a person there that spoke Mazatec, and it's just kind of probably the way it went with Maria Sabina, right? Like there was a triple translation there. And so I don't remember what was the question. I'll try to remember. But we ask a question, translation, and then the answer comes, and we all, including me, although I'm Mexican, but all of our Westerners were like, I guess he didn't understand the question. Let's ask again the question. How presumptuous can you be, right? So we ask again the question, and he gives us the same answer. Say, no, we're not getting through to him. So we ask again the question, and he gives the third time the answer, and then he said, you know what? He's given us the right answer, but he's coming from a completely different cosmology, that his answer we don't have where to put his answer, right? There's whatever the question is, basically his answer was, the mushrooms are going to tell you. It was something about I remember. It was something about the crossing of boundaries. How do you know if someone is not pure in the heart? Right? Or what do you do with someone something like that? And then he just kept saying, the mushrooms are going to tell you. The mushrooms are going to tell me, he the healer, how to deal with that. And that was not satisfying. We were hoping for Dean to get, ethics and, responsibilities and boundaries. And he was just going back to the mushrooms. And then eventually it became clear to us, he has a relationship with the mushrooms. The mushrooms for him are not a tool, right? Are not an intervention. Another teacher told me once, this was anyway, he told me that we shouldn't ask what are the mushrooms, but who are the mushrooms. We should engage with the mushrooms as teachers. So when I work with clients, I tell them, don't think that this is a medication. This is not like a Tylenol that you take when you're feeling a headache. Oh, I need a Tylenol. You pop a couple of pills, right? That's not the right framework. This is like you going and visiting a guru, right? People understand guru, and asking them questions. You wouldn't go like this, what's up? No, there's reverence, and they respect, and there's a desire to engage with the other. The Mazatecs hold the mushrooms like that. That's what they call the holy children, or los niños santos. It's a bad translation. It's not the best one, and the problem here is in Spanish. The closest translation is the little ones that sprout by themselves. Don't ask me to say that in Mazatec because my tongue cannot get it. But that's the real word in Mazatec for mushrooms, is the little ones that sprout by themselves. So they call them the little ones. And the idea is that they have this, the way they engage with them is they're incredibly wise, but they're also tricksters. So you have to engage them with respect, but with a little bit of, what are you trying to do here? Because they know that the mushrooms are playful in a way. So how do you engage with that? So to answer your question, there are many examples of that, but the main difference of the West and the shamanic traditions is that everything is alive, everything is enchanted, and you engage with everything as such. And the mushrooms are not exception. The mushrooms are actually intermediaries into the two worlds. So you have to be incredibly respectful of the mushrooms and how they go and find them when the season is the right season, and how they handle them, how they talk to them. You realize, wow, this is I cannot even presume that I know how to have that type of relationship, because I was born in the West, right? But the more that we understand that, the closer, the more that the mushrooms are going to trust us with their teaching. It's about their relationship. That would be, to me, the main difference.
And so in that same vein, how can people trained, for example, how can I, as a trained therapist, engage in these sort of traditions without appropriating or disrespect them? How do we help these two things meet in the middle without stealing ideas that are not mine, for example?
Yeah, that's a big topic. In the MAPS conference recently, in the last MAPS conference, I was talking with someone, and I was listening to someone, and he gave this wonderful example of appropriation. I say appropriation doesn't even work, right? And the example that he gave, that I'm going to repeat now, is he said, imagine that you see, of course, we need to update the references, but you'll all get what I'm talking about. Imagine that you see Michael Jordan playing basketball, and then you say, oh, I want to play like him. And you sneak to his locker room and you steal his shoes. Say, now I have Michael Jordan shoes. Now I'm going to be a great basketball player. It doesn't work, right? You need to do you have to be Michael Jordan. But even if you want to play like Michael Jordan, you need to do the training, and you need to do the work, and you need to do the preparation. You may, and of course, in these examples, they have a gift. But I'm getting a little bit too far away. But this idea that imitating something just because, hey, I'm just gonna use, I'm gonna smudge with Palo Santo, I'm gonna smudge with sage or copal because they do it. That doesn't really work. So I think that what you need to do is to understand first, respectfully, humbly, I would say, get curious and approach the traditions. To me, that's the most important. Second, you have to understand the context of what they're doing, because we in the West, when I take groups to Oaxaca, to Huautla, I tell them, we're going to see the beauty and the magic of the ceremony and the shamans. By the way, my teacher would have never called herself a shaman. She kind of laughed when I call her a shaman and say, I'm a curandera, which is a healer, right? I'm a curandera, don't give me that word. But anyway, let's call them shamans. When you engage with them, I forgot what I was going to say. Humbly approach them and try to understand what is it that they're trying to do. From that place, you let them sit with you. Let's sit with you. And then what I tell everyone, go find your own tradition. We are all indigenous from somewhere. We are all have a tradition. And more than I mean, there's value in learning, obviously, from all traditions, but there's something even more valuable that is go and searching your roots. And your roots may take you bunch of you say, well, there's no indigenous people in my tradition. No, maybe you need to go all the way back to Europe and to the Celtic or whatever it may be, right? But find your own tradition and resonate with it. Take the time to resonate with the tradition that is closest to you. It's really weird. It's really weird because I would say is, I don't know if I want to say genetic or energetic or what's the right word, but when you find that tradition, something in your soul kind of jumps of joy. Yes, this is it. So humbleness, curiosity, and understanding your own tradition, and then develop your own practices. They can be inspired in what they do. So don't copy what they do just because I don't know what they do it. Understand why they do it, and then in some ways find the way in which that resonates you and apply it. Now, this is a very general answer. We need to go. We would need to go more specific, and we don't have the time for that. But there's also sometimes there's the element of asking for permission. And in these shamanic traditions, it's about apprenticeship as well. That's why I sat at the feet of a Mexican healer for many years, because that tradition is about apprenticeship. Our Western tradition, no, it's about teaching. You go to a program, you spend a couple of months or a couple of years or whatever, you get a degree. Now you can do it. In their way, one of the healers that I work with, I met him say, he said, yeah, he's the son. He happens to be a psychologist, interestingly. But he said, I've been an apprentice with my dad for the last 20 years. I was like blown away. I say, well, I didn't say anything, but a part of me would say, well, it's about time that you graduate, right? But that's my Western mind. He's coming from a different place, and he's basically saying, my dad will, perhaps when my dad dies, I'll step up. Or perhaps my dad will tell me when I'm ready. So there's you see the word humbleness, even implicit or explicit, keeps coming up and that's something that we lack a lot. We tend to see them as lesser than, and they're not. They're just different cosmology, different practices, different everything, right? But not lesser than.
And that humility makes me think a bit about reciprocity, and how sometimes we think reciprocity means gifting or other physical acts, but even that act of humility can be part of reciprocity. And so what other things can we do in reciprocity to all of these teachings that we are absorbing from other traditions?
Let me tell you something that I was in a gathering of different indigenous Native Americans, original cultures. And it was in Mexico. They invited healers from different places, and they invited Westerners. So we're having this conversation, and it's really funny in a very tragic way. But at some point, we're talking about reciprocity and reciprocity. Yeah, we need to give reciprocity to give us, and sounds wonderful. And every Westerner was saying like, yeah, reciprocity, right on. And then at some point, one of the elders stand up and say, you know what? I keep hearing people talk about reciprocity. What about permission? You see, if you come to my house and take my car, you steal my car, and then you come say, oh, reciprocity, I'm going to give you something into it. No, keep me my car. I didn't give you permission to take. Reciprocity is a second step, right? So we have to be very careful that reciprocity even suggests already that we have the right to take from them. And then, of course, we're going to give them something in. So for me, it was really interesting because I was in that wagon myself. And I do it. I believe in reciprocity. Oh, that's the thing I forgot. When I take groups to Mexico, something that I make the group do is actually work in the community. We clean streets. We paint walls. We do, what does the community need? Because it's not just the beauty of the ceremony. It's also their struggles, the difficulties. So when you meet them at that place, that's the way that you humbly saying, I'm here to serve, instead of I'm here to take. This is not the Disneyland approach that you go, you take a picture with the shaman, you eat the mushrooms, and oh, that was wonderful. You buy the little souvenir and you leave, right? No, this is let's get our hands dirty with what they need. You ask them what do you need? I don't come from high horse and say, I'm going to give you this because this is what. No, you ask them, what do you need? And we get surprised, right? But so reciprocity is about giving back what they need. So trying to answer, to again, humbly sitting with them and saying, how can I help you? What do you need? And sometimes they say, as it's been written in books, I've never seen it, it has never happened to me directly, but so, you have nothing, you have nothing that I want, right? That's a possibility. Now, because most of these cultures are marginalized, we can't help them, and we ought to help them in many ways. But let's not skip the point of permission. And again, we go back to humbleness, to say we want something from you. And another teacher told me once, the West has taken everything from the indigenous people. They took away their freedom. She was talking as an indigenous. They took away our land. They took away our freedom. They took away our riches. They took away from us everything. And when it seemed like we didn't have anything else to give, now they want to take away our spirituality. That hurts. So we need to be very aware. And this is not guilt tripping anyone. It's just this awareness that we need to really go in humbleness and respect to meet with them and take the time to learn what they are willing to teach us. Even with my teacher, it took a while. It took a few years for her to really trust me, and she said that to me. She said, "You know what? Only now I begin to believe that you have a true heart, that you really want to learn this." For the first 4 or 5 years, she was just testing me, which is kind of annoying, but I understand. I understand, right? It's a process.
Wow, okay. We have really touched on so many beautiful subjects, and I want to open it up before we go in a different direction or start digging deeper, which we can 100% do. But I wonder if you that are here today with us have any questions for Sergio, as you heard what he's shared, what's in your heart. If you want to unmute yourself, please do. You can put your hand up in Zoom. You can write your question in the box. We're happy to take your questions now.
I just saw that there's a bunch of people here. I had in the only 5 people with no image. I saw like we were like 7 or 8. No, thank you. I'm happy that you're here. Louis, sorry.
Hi, Louis. Love to hear your question. Go ahead and unmute.
So I know the topic, right, regards the soul and how it interrelates to psychedelics. So I always like to start at the base so that everyone can be on like the same page. Um, how would you describe a soul to someone so we can all kind of function behind? Because you said that, over time, the definition of psych in psychology changed. And I believe one of the changes that was important is that we started incorporating more of the self, but in its parts. We started incorporating more of what the social self, the more physical, the physiological self a little bit more. And so what is considered the soul, or at least us, changes. But to describe this what a soul is, I think is like nicely important because I even struggle with that. I'm like, someone's like, oh yeah, you're spiritual. Like, what's a soul? I'm like, energy thing inside you, right? So how would you describe a soul?
An easy question, right? Just to warm up. I'll give you well, it's not my answer. This is a Hindu inspired answer in a way, and my understanding of a Hindu inspired answer. So we are multiple layers, right? We have a body, we have a mind, and we talk about a spirit of a soul. And sometimes these two worlds are used interchangeably, and perhaps even I use them sometimes interchangeably, because unless someone like you that say, no, I want to really go there, for most people is not a big deal. So for me, and this is actually, I said Hindu tradition, but also Christianity, mysticism, and Kabbalah speak in those terms, general terms. The soul is okay, what is the best way to go about it? The soul is your personal. I'm trying to use the word. I know what I want to say, but I just don't know what to say. So the soul is individual. The personal manifestation of who you are on a spiritual level. Is this idea in the Vedas? They talk about God being the sun, and our soul is one of those rays of the sun, right? Like God being the fire, and each one of those candles, that is the soul. So is your individual manifestation. It has your imprint of who you are, and that brings about karmic aspects of it. What are we all one? Yes, it's the Atman, right? At one level, yes, we're one. At the spirit level, we're all one. At the soul level, we are spiritual being. We are spiritual beings. I don't want to use the word spiritual. Unsubstantial beings that have individuality, and then from there we move to lower vibrational level, to the mind, and then eventually to the body, right?
So importantly, you distinguish like the soul and the spirit being even a more macro, right? Understanding of you call it the mystics, but like I don't know, like the mystics, right? But yeah, like to me, when I try to describe the soul, I also find it hard. Like the words are there because it's always like, to me when I describe the soul, it's like a feeling, and I can't not use feelings and experiences and memories when describing the soul. So I wanted to know like how you would describe it. So in part, I can take the definition and kind of explain it to people, right? In a way that's digestible to them and not just like as it means for other people that understand the soul to speak with, right? Like layman terms basically for the soul.
So I would say, let me use a well-known metaphor. I love this because it's in my head, it's like mind-blowing. So think about think about clay in general terms. You can use clay, or someone that knows how to work with clay can make a cup with clay, or can make a vase with clay, or a tray with clay. The clay is one. It's the same clay in the cup, in the vase, and in the tray. But each one of them, it's a manifestation, an individual manifestation, perfectly distinguishable from one another. You wouldn't confuse the cup with the tray, even though they're both made with clay. So in my understanding, I'm not an authority. I'm a student just as you are. In my understanding, the soul would be the clay, the individual manifestation of spirit, while clay macro, as you said, would be spirit. I don't know if that helps. And there are other perspectives that don't agree with that, by the way. That's the one that makes sense to me.
I love how we're starting light with the questions. So we'll go to Cameron and then Dean and then Jerome. So Cameron says, Sergio, you mentioned how the topic of guides having experience in psychedelics is controversial. Would you be willing to elaborate on this? Is it strictly because of its legality?
Oh, no. No, I'm not even talking about legality. Of course, legality is an issue, but no. There's a big discussion, a fierce debate about whether guides should have psychedelic experience or not. And this is an interesting debate because for most of the time of humanity, and I'm not exaggerating, it was a given. In the shamanic traditions, it would be unheard of a shaman saying, "No, I'm not gonna eat mushrooms. I'm gonna work with mushrooms, but no, thank you, I pass." That's inconceivable, right? This just doesn't happen. So the shamanic tradition for millennia, centuries, if not millennia, have considered that in order to be a healer, you need to experience, you need to know those places. You cannot guide someone to places where you haven't been yourself. Psychotherapy, interestingly, follow a similar path. Freud himself, which we call the founder of psychoanalysis, and for sure one of the main, not the first one, but one of the main systematizers of what we call psychotherapy right now. Psychology is deeper, is prior, he said, every psychotherapist has to do their own analysis. It's inconceivable that you could be a psychoanalyst without doing your own work. Same principle. You have to do your own work. And when for the model of psychedelics, I did put this research in my dissertation. For decades, it was almost, not almost, assumed that you have to do your own work. Groff and all the big ones back in the 60s and 50s said, of course you have to do it. That's the main training, is that as we move along and as we get to the 90s, and medicine begins to get really curious about psychedelics, doctors have a different paradigm. Doctors don't have to try every single medication in order to prescribe it. I've been with doctors that say, hey, I don't have to be diabetic to prescribe insulin. I don't need to be depressed in order to prescribe antidepressants, which is true. Of course, other doctors say, yeah, but when you've been there, a doctor that is a diabetic has a different type of understanding of the diabetics situation. But it is true. It would be crazy that every single doctor had to try every single medication, right? It's a different paradigm. But when they come together, then becomes a problem of which paradigm is the one that is going to prevail. And we don't know the answer to that. We really don't know. And of course, there's the topic of legal. And then, because we live in this day and age, there's the topic of, well, what if I want to be a psychedelic guide, but my religion forbids me from taking psychedelic? Are you telling me that I cannot be a psychedelic guide? And there's a big discussion about it. It's like you say, yeah, well, I want to be a pilot, but I don't want to fly. I'm afraid of flying. I don't want to fly. Or I want to be a sommelier, but I don't, my religion is against drinking. Well, then choose another career, right? But it's a big discussion. I don't think there's a solution there. Camps training programs are trying to figure out, especially in universities where they cannot promote the use of illegal substances, becomes a problem in itself. But it's a big topic. I hope that helps. There's no answer, but I hope that helps.
Thank you for that. So we're going to go to Dean, then Jerome, then Suman, then Ellie, and then Janice. So we'll try to get it all in.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you. Dean, go ahead.
Thanks, Lori.
You
Thank
can
you for
unmute yourself.
hosting. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Sergio, for your talk thus far. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what your responses to some of these more individual questions, but I'm curious, like there's a new space emerging. There's a bridge now between like the recovery space, people who are sober or abstinent, 12-step based, and starting to utilize psychedelics in their own practice. I've been in the recovery space almost a decade. I work as like a case manager, family consultant, for patients with mental health issues, addiction issues, all of that. I'm a drug and alcohol counselor, like by training. I've really been on the fence, and I have a lot of like personal work in the last few years, sitting with different plant medicines and like Playa del Carmen, Mexico area, with some amazing facilitators. And I've really been on the fence around like getting a master's degree or not. My question is like, you're a PhD, you've done a lot of schooling, you've done a lot of research, and you've also led groups and guided people, through experiences culturally and with plant medicine and different teachers. Um, I'm a pretty relational guy. I understand people and psychology well. How much emphasis do you place on sort of Western psychology master's degree, versus like sitting with plants, learning from teachers? What, like, I'm just trying to weigh like the importance from you who's done both. Um, and also like, I kind of like the idea of staying away from licensure and the Board of Behavioral Sciences because it's just a little more flexible. in terms of like the work that you can facilitate at times?
The answer, I mean, it's a complex question, because to answer that, we need to, and you don't have to answer to me, but each one of us need to locate ourselves where we are, right? I tell people ask me a similar question often. Do I need to get a degree? Do I need to go to university? I say, well, let me tell you. If you want to be, as I like to call myself sometimes, if you want, which of course I'm not, because I'm here talking to you all, but if you want to be a wizard in the woods, you don't need to get a degree, right? You don't. You need to get training. But that's undeniable. You need to get training. That, please don't hear anything that I say here as, no, you just take the mushrooms and they'll teach you. Yes, they will teach you, but you need someone that knows the path, someone that knows the way. So if you live in the West, I was that question came along recently because I was working with someone that had a lot of experience in the underground world, and she was wondering whether she should get certified in Oregon. And we had this conversation. I said, well, if you want to at some point professionally advertise yourself as a certified this or that or whatever, if you want to work in that world, then certification is a really good idea. Why? Because that's what the world is. The same thing with licensing, right? If you want to, does a licensed therapist knows more than an unlicensed therapy, assuming that they have the same experience? No, but the license gives you a seal of approval. Yeah. You can trust that. So I find myself in that place, and sounds ridiculous with the PhD and all. The PhD just in some, I won't go into that. That's a personal story that is irrelevant. I'll be happy to talk with you at some point if you're interested. But I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that it's like, so how do you want to practice, or where, kind of what pathway do you want to take? Totally makes sense. Yeah, it's a personal thing.
Yeah. If you want to be if you want to do research, you need to have the credentials. You have to have letters, right? If you want to do a wizard in the woods, no, because I mean, when I work when I go to Huautla, I mean, my teacher had no formal education. She hardly could speak Spanish, read it Spanish. I don't know. She read Spanish, but really poorly. But she was a towering figure, right? But she lived in a community where degrees were not that important. Nobody cared that I was a PhD. Nobody ever asked me. No, so you have to look at your surroundings and say, where do I want to locate myself in this complex environment, right?
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
I just want to say we might be over a few minutes. I hope you're all okay with that. We'll take maybe a couple more questions. Jerome says, can you expand on the recommendations to explore our own indigenous roots? How and what is the best way to do this? For example, he says he lives in Toronto since the 80s. He's Sinhalese heritage, originally from Sri Lanka, raised in a Catholic household, but his ancestors are Buddhist and they're indigenous people that are likely linked to his heritage.
That's very rich heritage. I understand that the question is not just for you, but it's a general answer. Find the roots as far as you can get. Some people are lucky enough to be able to find their particular lineage. That's not my case, definitely. But that's, if you have that, follow that thread, pull in that thread, and see how far it takes you. For the majority of us, that's I don't know, for my majority, probably for the majority of us, that is not the case. So you go as far as you can go. And no one just, I mean, roots is not one root, right? It's not like a tree house, one root. You follow the roots, but you follow them both with your mind and with your heart. Give you an example. I'm a Mexican. Of course, you can always do a DNA test, and that'll give you some insight, right? But in my case, was different. Eventually, I did the DNA test. But I'm a Mexican. But for historical reasons, Mexicans, unless you live in the same place forever, You don't know what's your background. You know that we have indigenous I don't look indigenous. My last names are not indigenous. When I look by my family, I don't find indigenous people, but I know that I suspected that I had indigenous blood. So what I do is I start looking into the different traditions in Mexico. And to use me as an example, just for graphical purpose, not because it's a worthy example, the Mayan tradition is a very rich tradition. It never spoke to me. I try really hard to learn about it, and I went to Mayan healers, and I participated, and I did it. It was like, yeah, whatever. And then I start digging into the Aztec tradition, the Nahuatl tradition, and that's what I'm saying. Eventually, my heart just said, finally, we're talking. So there's this aspect that something inside your heart or your DNA or whatever I think is more energetic than everything else. That's the thread that say this is speaking to my heart. Eventually, I did the DNA test, and you're like, lo and behold, yeah, I have no Maya blood, but a lot of central and northern Mexico area. But follow your heart. Follow your heart, and your heart will tell you. You have a few aspects that you already know, so just follow those different threads. And now we're running.
I love that answer because you can answer so many things with that. With follow your heart.
Follow your heart.
You.
Follow your bliss.
Yes, thank you. We have a few questions still, and I wonder if perhaps you're open to taking them over email. I can either gather them for you, or you can share your email address, whatever you're comfortable with. And as you're thinking about the answer to that, I want to say to all of you, I think a lot of you here are connected to us, and I'm so happy to see familiar faces and names. But if there's any way that we can be supportive in your process as you ponder on this possibility for your practice or for your journey, feel free to contact us. One of my colleagues is going to put a link in the chat if you want to get in touch with us at ATMA CENA, and Sergio just placed his
website. Yeah.
On there as well. So thank you for your burning questions. I want to say, I know my internet is not great, but I want to say before we go, we're good. Okay. I honestly, looks like we're gonna have to do this again. It's been a beautiful conversation, and I feel incredibly lucky and blessed to have had you in the space. And so I hope this is a to be continued. But as we close off, one of our instructors, her name is Dr. Pam Crisco. She is a force here in Canada. And when I asked her about what the future of psychedelics was in her mind, she said, the future of psychedelics is boring. It's boring because it'll just be a part of what we do. And so I want to ask you that same question. What is the future of psychedelic therapy in your mind?
Oh, so I'm going to be in direct opposition with that. I hope it's not boring. There is a potential for that. There is a potential for that because the materialistic milieu loves to absorb and use, just like we absorb yoga and it became aerobics. And just as we absorb tobacco, which is a sacred plant, and it became pernicious. I think that what we're seeing here is it's almost like the yin yang. Two worldviews are kind of dancing. They're always dancing. There's always the white wise and the black wise. Alan Watts loved to say that it's a game. Neither should win. But all the time, the black ones are saying, oh, the whites are winning, oh, to fuck them. And then the white ones say the opposite. He also likes to say that there's always gooey people and prickly people. The gooey hate the prickly because they're too stiff and prickly, right? And the prickly hate the gooey because they're so loosey-goosey and they just have no structure. So I think we're seeing I think humanity has taken this battle very far out. And I think psychedelics, again, maybe psychedelics as Michael, oh, How to Change Your Mind?
Michael Pollan.
Michael Pollan. Michael Pollan has suggested maybe psychedelics are using us. And I would go different. I think that psychedelics are giving us a chance. Probably they tried with the dinosaurs and they say, no, these guys just don't get it yet. And dinosaurs were gone, right? They tried us in the 50s. They tried us many times around, but they tried Western civilization in the 50s and we couldn't handle it. We made a mess out of it, right? So they say, no, let's pull back for a little while. They never went away. They never go away. So I think they're saying, okay, it's 2025. It's been going on since the 90s, right? But let's see if they learn their lessons. Let's give these humans, Stammer said, the humans are not in control. The funny monkeys only believe that they're in control, right? And I think that the mushrooms are saying, let's see if they can step up. So I believe that, I don't know what's the future of psychedelics. I think it's a great opportunity. And I just hope that we are capable of meeting this opportunity with our best selves. I hope that we are able to receive the gifts of psychedelics with again, humbleness and wisdom. And I think that the future, if that's what happened, it could be great. I think that, like with everything else, part of it is this is getting very long. Sorry. I think that part of that, I think that we're going to see the medicalization of part of psychedelics, but we're also seeing the sacralization of psychedelics, and that's interesting. So again, it's the prickly and the gooey, always dancing. And I love there's something beautiful, and that's something that psychedelics teach you over and over again. That it's a dance.
What a beautiful image. Again, I so appreciate your time, and I appreciate you for coming here live. And for those of you watching the recording, thank you for being here. We will send this to all of you, and to be continued, Sergio. Muchas gracias for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for doing this work, taking it seriously, and keep taking it seriously. It's worth it. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.